In a small, vibrant village nestled between sweeping green hills and bordered by a winding river, lived Amina, a woman known for her tireless work ethic and deep-rooted family values. Amina spent her days tending to the farmland she inherited from her parents, growing vegetables and spices that she sold in the village market. Her mornings started with the rhythmic sounds of her hoe hitting the soil, the scent of damp earth filling the air as she prepared the land. By midday, she could often be seen carrying baskets brimming with fresh produce, her movements graceful and steady. Amina's life was simple but fulfilling. She was married to Musa, a fisherman who spent long hours by the river, casting his nets with hopes of a good catch. Musa's bond with Amina ran deep, built on years of shared dreams, hard work, and mutual respect. They had 2 young children, a boy and a girl, who brought them endless joy and energy. The children, though still young, already showed signs of inheriting their parents' hard-working nature. Often, they would accompany Amina to the fields or Musa to the river, eager to learn the skills that sustained their family. The village itself was a close-knit community where everyone knew each other, and life was steeped in tradition. Houses were built of mud bricks and thatched roofs, lining the narrow dirt paths that wound through the settlement. Each morning, villagers greeted one another with warm smiles, exchanging news and small gifts of food or crafted items. Though Amina cherished this sense of belonging, she had her share of challenges. Living so close to family and neighbors came with its own set of complications. Rumors and minor disputes were part of village life, often flaring up only to die down just as quickly. Amina's relationship with her husband, while loving, was not without its tensions. Recently, Musa had grown distant, spending more time by the river and returning home later each night. Amina sensed something troubling him, but chose to focus on her work, hoping that he would come to her when he was ready. She reminded herself daily of her role as a wife and mother, bearing the weight of her family's well-being on her shoulders. Though she was soft-spoken, Amina was known for her strong will and resilience, qualities that had earned her the respect of both her family and the wider village community. However, beneath Amina's composed exterior, small flickers of frustration began to emerge. She worried about Musa's change in behavior and how it might affect their family. But in her heart, she held on to her core values, patience, loyalty, and an unwavering dedication to her loved ones. The quiet tension simmered, like the soft, bubbling heat of a pot left on the fire too long, hinting at a story that was just beginning to unfold. One bright morning, as Amina was gathering vegetables in her small field, she noticed her neighbor, Fatou, standing at the edge of her property, arms crossed and eyes narrowed. Fatou was an older woman, known in the village for her sharp tongue and quick temper. Amina knew that Fatou had her own land, but the boundary between their fields was a long-standing source of tension, a thread that could snap with the slightest tug. "Good morning, Fatou," Amina called politely, hoping to ease the strain with a warm greeting. But Fatou's expression didn't soften. Instead, she took a step closer, her voice cutting through the morning calm. "Amina," she began, her tone laced with accusation, "I've noticed your crops are growing awfully close to my side. You're planting on my land, and I won't stand for it." Surprised, Amina straightened up, wiping her hands on her wrap skirt. "I'm careful to stay within my boundary, Fatou," she replied, trying to keep her tone even. "I wouldn't take what isn't mine." But Fatou wasn't convinced. "Careful," she scoffed. "Careful is what I'd call someone who respects others' property. Look at those peppers, they're practically on my soil. If you want more land, go ask for it. Don't steal from me." The accusation stung, and Amina felt a wave of irritation rise within her. She had worked tirelessly to cultivate her land, respecting the limits set by her family generations before. To be accused of encroachment, especially by someone she had always tried to get along with, felt unfair. Yet, she took a deep breath, aware that raising her voice would only fuel the fire. Villagers were beginning to pause their morning routines, turning curious eyes toward the commotion. "I assure you, Fatu, I've done nothing wrong," Amina said quietly, resisting the urge to defend herself more sharply. "But if it bothers you, I can move the peppers a little closer to the center of my field." Fatu's scowl deepened, but she said nothing, turning on her heel and walking away in a huff. As she disappeared down the path, Amina's frustration lingered. This wasn't the first time Fatu had voiced complaints about the boundaries between their lands. It seemed that, in her eyes, Amina's success with her crops was a provocation, something that stirred resentment. Later that evening, Amina confided in Musa, hoping he might offer advice or comfort. But Musa, tired from his own work by the river, listened in silence, his gaze distant. "She's always been like that, Amina," he said after a moment. "You're better off ignoring her." The response disappointed her. She had expected more empathy, a shared frustration, or even a plan for how they might handle Fatu's accusations together. Instead, Musa's disinterest only deepened her sense of isolation. Amina felt that she was carrying the weight of their household alone, managing the conflicts and pressures that came with their land and reputation in the village. She tried to push these feelings aside, focusing on her daily tasks. But the tension gnawed at her, lingering in her thoughts like a thorn that couldn't be dislodged. Days passed, and the disagreement seemed to escalate on its own, as such conflicts often do in a close-knit community. Word of the altercation with Fatu spread, each retelling more embellished than the last. Soon, whispers began circulating that Amina was trying to expand her land unfairly, taking advantage of her neighbors' trust. She even heard murmurs that Fatu was planning to bring the matter to the village council, accusing Amina of dishonesty. Amina felt a mixture of anger and sadness, feeling both wronged and helpless. Fatu's accusations now threatened her reputation, something she valued deeply. In the village, a good name was everything. The community valued honesty and fairness, and any stain on her character would impact not just her, but her entire family. Still, she held her head high, trying to show strength in the face of rumors. Yet, the strain began to wear on her. Friends who once stopped by her field in the morning now avoided her gaze, their interactions tinged with doubt. She noticed subtle changes in how villagers greeted her, with some withholding their usual warmth. Amina's daily life, once a source of pride and peace, had become clouded by suspicion and whispers she couldn't control. And as the days passed, a question lingered: how much of herself would she need to give to protect the life she had built? The murmurs around the village grew louder, each whisper striking Amina's heart like a hammer. What had started as a petty dispute with her neighbor, Fatu, had now spiraled into a matter that everyone seemed to have an opinion on. Villagers passing by her field would mutter under their breaths, casting suspicious glances her way. Her morning trips to the market, once filled with friendly chatter and familiar faces, now felt cold and unwelcoming. One evening, as Amina returned home with a basket of yams, she overheard her children whispering outside their small hut. Her oldest, Kofi, looked troubled, his voice barely a murmur. "Mama's in trouble because of the field, isn't she?" he asked, glancing anxiously at his younger sister, Adia. Adia, who was just as confused, nodded slowly. "Everyone's saying Mama's stealing land. Do you think that's true?" The words stung Amina, sharper than any of the rumors. She took a deep breath, steeling herself as she stepped into the conversation. "Come here, children," she said, her voice soft but steady. Kofi and Adia looked up, surprise flickering across their faces as they realized she had overheard them. Kofi, Adia, remember this, Amina began, crouching down to their level. Your mother is not a thief. Sometimes, people say things that aren't true, and they believe them because it's easier than understanding the truth. Our family has always lived with integrity, and we will continue to do so. The children nodded, their young faces marked with uncertainty, but Amina could see a glimmer of pride in their eyes. It gave her the strength to keep going, even as she felt the strain of the community's judgment weighing on her more each day. The following day, her husband, Musa, returned home earlier than usual. His face was lined with worry, and he barely looked at Amina as he sat down, exhausted. She sensed that he had heard the rumors too. After all, in a village as small as theirs, secrets were nearly impossible to keep. But what troubled her more was his silence. Musa's quiet demeanor was different from his usual calm. It felt like an accusation in itself, one he didn't even need to voice. As she prepared their evening meal, Amina decided she couldn't let the silence grow between them. She turned to him, her voice gentle but firm. Musa, I know you've heard what people are saying. But you know me. You know I wouldn't take what isn't ours. Musa didn't meet her gaze. Instead, he sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. Amina, he began, you know how important our name is in this village. My father built our reputation with his hands, and I've worked hard to carry that legacy. If people believe these lies, it's not just you who will be affected, it's all of us. The weight of his words settled heavily on her, and for a moment, Amina felt a wave of frustration rise within her. She wanted him to stand by her, to see beyond the gossip and trust in her honesty. But his loyalty to the family's reputation ran deep, and she knew he was torn between standing up for her and protecting their name. Do you believe them, Musa? She asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Musa looked at her, his expression softening. No, Amina. I know you, and I believe in you. But that doesn't mean the others will. And if this continues, well, I don't know what the village council might decide. That night, sleep eluded her. She lay awake, the sounds of the village night filling the air outside their hut. In her heart, a storm of emotions churned, anger, sadness, and a quiet determination to protect her family. She realized that this conflict had spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of her life. Friends she had once trusted now kept their distance, their greetings cold and brief. Even her own children had been tainted by the words of others. In the days that followed, things only grew worse. Fatu's son, Abu Bakar, began making snide comments in the marketplace, loudly enough for others to hear. Some people don't respect boundaries, he would say, glancing in Amina's direction. Each comment felt like a fresh wound, and Amina's patience began to fray. One afternoon, as she was selling vegetables in the market, she overheard a group of women whispering nearby. If she's willing to steal land, who knows what else she'll do, one of them said. Another nodded, her eyes darting toward Amina. I wouldn't want her around my family. She's bringing shame to us all. The words cut deep, and for the first time, Amina felt the sting of isolation in her own community. She clenched her fists, resisting the urge to confront them, knowing it would only feed the fire. But as she walked home that evening, her resolve hardened. She couldn't let this continue. She had to find a way to resolve this conflict and reclaim her dignity. As the sun set over the village, Amina stood on the edge of her field, her gaze fixed on the boundary between her land and Fatu's. The whispers, the judgment, and the distance from her own family all weighed heavily on her shoulders. But beneath it all, a quiet strength was building, a determination to face this conflict head-on, to restore the peace she had once taken for granted. The situation had gone too far, and Amina knew that the time for silence was over. As tension reached its peak, Amina knew she had to confront the issue directly, not only for herself, but for her family and her honor. She decided to seek out the village chief, an elder known for his wisdom and fairness. That evening, under the large baobab tree where village disputes were often settled, Amina gathered with the chief, Fatu, and several members of the community who had become entangled in the conflict. The village chief, seated on a wooden stool, listened as Amina recounted her side of the story. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion as she described her dedication to her family and how deeply the rumors had affected her. She explained her side of the land boundary issue and how she had done nothing wrong but had been judged without any evidence. Then, Fatu had her chance to speak. She argued passionately, claiming that her family's plot had always stretched a few meters beyond where Amina had marked her boundary. Fatu's words were sharp, accusing Amina of dishonesty, but the chief raised his hand, signaling for calm. The chief, known for his perceptive insight, asked both women a series of questions about the boundary's history, probing for any evidence that could reveal the truth. He turned to the other villagers, asking if anyone could remember where the boundary had been years ago. An elderly man finally spoke up, recalling an old tree that once stood as a marker near the disputed edge. This revelation was enough to settle the dispute. The chief declared that the boundary would be adjusted according to the old man's memory, ensuring fairness to both sides. A sense of relief washed over Amina, though she noticed the resentment still simmering in Fatu's eyes. The chief, sensing this too, addressed the crowd. "Let us remember that words, like seeds, grow into things we cannot always control," he said. "Rumors and accusations have hurt a family today. Let us be wiser in the future." With the chief's words, the villagers began to disperse. Amina looked at Fatu, who avoided her gaze, still bristling with frustration. Taking a deep breath, Amina stepped forward and extended her hand to Fatu. "We may never agree on everything," she said quietly, "but we are neighbors, and for the sake of our families, let's find peace." Fatu hesitated but finally took Amina's hand, offering a brief nod of acceptance. Though their reconciliation was tentative, it was a start, and a weight lifted from Amina's shoulders. As Amina walked home, she felt a newfound sense of strength and peace. She had stood up for herself, found resolution, and perhaps most importantly, she had seen the impact of patience and honesty in the face of hardship. The conflict might have scarred her reputation temporarily, but in confronting it with integrity, Amina knew she had won a lasting respect in the eyes of those who mattered most. In the days that followed, life in the village returned to its usual rhythm, but for Amina, things had changed. The conflict had left her with a deeper understanding of herself and the importance of harmony within the community. Though the tension with Fatu would take time to fully heal, Amina noticed small acts of kindness from her neighbors, extra help at the well, friendly smiles, and words of encouragement from those who had witnessed her resilience. One afternoon, Amina gathered her children and sat them down to talk about what had happened. She shared the lesson she had learned about standing firm in one's truth, but also the importance of forgiveness and patience. She reminded them that misunderstandings and conflicts were part of life, but how they responded to them defined who they were. Reflecting on the chief's words, Amina told her children, "Rumors and harsh words can spread like fire, but it takes wisdom and kindness to put out the flames. Never be afraid to stand up for what is right, but remember to seek peace when you can." The conflict had been a challenge, but it had also brought Amina closer to her values and to the people around her. She felt a renewed connection to her village and to her role as a mother and neighbor. The community, too, seemed to understand the value of respecting each other's boundaries and being mindful of the words they chose to speak. Amina's story became a quiet reminder in the village. Conflicts may arise, but they can be overcome with patience, courage, and a commitment to peace. And in this lesson, she found strength, knowing her children would carry it forward. Thank you for watching this story of resilience, patience, and the strength it takes to seek peace. What would you do if faced with a similar challenge? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective on handling conflicts and maintaining harmony in your community. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more tales that touch the heart and inspire. Share this with anyone who might appreciate a reminder about the power of understanding and forgiveness. Thanks for being part of our community, and we'll see you in the next video.